My mother called it a prop. She begged me to shred it before I humiliated myself walking into a bank with a piece of paper she claimed was written by a confused, dying man. But looking at the check in my hands, written out for $20,000 in Grandpa's shaky but distinct script, I didn't feel like I was holding a mistake. I felt like I was holding a weapon. So I didn't destroy it. I deposited it. The envelope sat on my kitchen counter for 3 hours before I touched it. It was a standard business envelope, white and unassuming, the kind you buy in packs of 50 at the grocery store, but the return address was a punch to the gut. It was my grandfather's address. The handwriting was not his, though it was the sharp, angular scrawl of my mother. She had forwarded this to me. I was 33 years old, standing in a rental apartment that smelled faintly of the downstairs neighbor's cigarette smoke, staring at a piece of mail from a dead man. My life at that moment was a carefully constructed house of cards. On the surface, things looked manageable. I had a job as a junior copywriter for a mid-sized marketing firm. I had health insurance. I had a car that started most mornings. But underneath the veneer of stability, I was drowning. My student loans were a monthly hemorrhage that left me gasping for air. My rent in the city had gone up 6% in the last year alone. And there was the other thing, the shadow I kept tucked away in the deepest corner of my shame, a credit card debt from 2 years ago, the result of a failed business venture and a naive trust in a partner who had vanished. I had never told my family about the crash. To them, I was just Claire the dreamer, Claire the sensitive one, Claire who couldn't quite grip the ladder of success the way my older brother, David, did. Grandpa had been the only one who didn't look at me with that mixture of pity and exhaustion. He was precise. He was a man of few words, a retired structural engineer who believed in the integrity of materials, whether it was steel beams or human character. When I was small and would cry over a scraped knee or a bruised ego, Mom would tell me to stop being so dramatic. Grandpa would just sit me down, hand me a clean handkerchief, and wait until I was done. Then he would ask, simply, "What is the plan now?" He died 3 weeks ago. The funeral was a blur of black wool coats and damp lilies. I had stood in the back, feeling like an intruder in my own grief, while Mom and David managed the guests, shaking hands and accepting casseroles with practiced grace. They were good at the business of death. I was just good at the feeling of it. I finally picked up the envelope. It felt light. My thumb slid under the flap. Tearing the paper, inside, there was another envelope, smaller, sealed with tape, and a sticky note from Mom attached to the front. Found this in his desk, addressed to you. Probably nonsense, but thought you should see it. X. Oh, Mom. I peeled off the sticky note and opened the inner envelope. 2 things fell out onto the laminate countertop. The first was a check. A personal check from Grandpa's credit union account. It was light blue with a safety pattern of vague, wavy lines. I picked it up, my fingers trembling slightly. The date was written in his familiar, shaky hand, dated 4 days before he died. Paid to the order of Claire Butler. The amount line stopped my breath. $20,000. I stared at the numbers. 2, 0, 0, 0, 0. Then the written line. Where his script was more labored, the letters slightly disconnected as if the pen had been heavy in his hand. 20,000 and 0 over 100. I blinked, waiting for the numbers to rearrange themselves into something sensible, like $200, a birthday gift, a token. But the ink remained stubborn. $20,000. The second item was a piece of notepad paper, torn from the little yellow legal pads he always kept by his telephone. There was a note, written in the same shaky ballpoint ink. It was short. It didn't say "I love you" or "buy yourself something nice." It read, "Don't let them rewrite me." I read it 5 times. Don't let them rewrite me. The silence in my apartment suddenly felt very loud. The refrigerator hummed. A car horn blared outside. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was not a normal inheritance. There had been no reading of a will yet. But Mom had made it clear that everything was in a trust. Everything was complicated. Everything was being handled by the lawyers and her. She had used that word a lot lately. Handled. Don't let them rewrite me. It felt like a command. It felt like he knew something. I reached for my phone. My thumb hovered over my mother's contact photo, a picture of her smiling tightly at a Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago. I shouldn't call. My gut screamed at me not to call. If Grandpa had wanted her to know about this, he would have told her, but the habit of seeking approval is a hard addiction to break. I was the daughter who always needed help. I was the one who made mistakes. Surely, this check was a mistake, a senile slip of the pen. If I deposited it and it bounced, or if I took money that wasn't meant for me, I would be the villain they always expected me to be. I pressed call. She answered on the second ring. Hello? Her voice was crisp, distracted. I could hear the clicking of a keyboard in the background. Hi, Mom, I said. I got the mail. The envelope you forwarded. Oh, that, she said, her tone dropping into a bored register. I almost threw it out, but I figured you would want it for a keepsake. It was in the top drawer of his desk, tucked under some old bills. Mom, I said, looking at the blue slip of paper. It is a check. There was a pause. The typing stopped. A check? She asked. For what? For me, I said. It is made out to me. For $20,000. The silence that followed was heavy, sucked dry of air. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. It was no longer bored. It was sharp, low, and dangerous. Claire, listen to me very carefully. Do not do anything with that piece of paper. He wrote it. Mom, I said, tracing the signature. It is dated the Tuesday before he died. He was confused. Claire, she snapped. He was on heavy medication those last few weeks. You know that. His mind was wandering. He probably thought he was writing a check for the plumber, or he was reliving something from 20 years ago. It is not real. It looks real, I said, though my confidence was fraying. The handwriting matches. It is a prop, she said, the words spitting out of the phone. It is a prop from a confused old man who didn't know what day of the week it was. If you try to cash that, you are going to humiliate yourself. The bank will laugh at you. They will flag it as fraud. And you will be the one standing there looking like an idiot. Do you want that? No, I whispered. Then tear it up. She said, tear it up. Claire, it is for your own good. I am trying to protect you from making a scene. We have enough to deal with right now without you creating a financial mess because you are desperate. The word stung. Desperate. She didn't know about my credit card debt, but she smelled the fear on me anyway. She always could. I did not say anything. I looked at the note again. Don't let them rewrite me. Claire, she said, her voice rising. Are you listening to me? I hear you. I said, good. Destroy it. We will talk later. I have to go meet the estate attorney. She hung up. I sat there, the phone warm in my hand. The shame was familiar. A cold wash over my chest. She was probably right. She was always right about these things. I was the one who messed up forms. I was the one who missed deadlines. Grandpa had been sick. Maybe he had hallucinated. Maybe he thought $20,000 was $20. My phone buzzed. A text message. Then another. I opened the family group chat. It was titled, Butler Family Updates. Mom. Claire, I told David about the check. Please tell him you destroyed it so we can all move on. David. Seriously, Claire? Mom says you are trying to cash a check from Grandpa? He didn't even know who I was half the time the week he died. Don't be weird. David. If you need money, just ask. Don't try to pull something with the estate accounts. It looks bad. David. Put it in the shredder. I stared at the screen. Don't try to pull something. Steal. That was the subtext. They thought I was a thief. They thought I was so broken, so pathetic, that I would take advantage of a dying man's confusion. Tears pricked my eyes. Hot and sudden, I wanted to shred it. I wanted to tear it into tiny confetti pieces and send them a picture just to make the cold feeling in my stomach go away. I wanted to be the good daughter. But then I looked at the note again. Don't let them rewrite me. Grandpa was precise. He was an engineer. He didn't do things by accident. even when he was sick, even when he was tired. He folded his napkins corner to corner. He arranged his pills in perfect rows. And the note, if he was confused, if he was hallucinating, would he write something so lucid? Don't let them rewrite me. It wasn't the rambling of a dementia patient. It was a directive. If I tore up this check, I wasn't just throwing away money. I was agreeing with Mom. I was agreeing that Grandpa was crazy. I was agreeing that he had no agency, no mind, no will left at the end. I was helping them rewrite him. I stood up. My knees felt shaky. I was not going to shred it. I grabbed my purse. I grabbed my car keys. Before I could think about it, before the shame could paralyze me, I walked out the door. The drive to the credit union was a blur. I didn't go to my usual branch. I went to the one 3 towns over, a generic brick building next to a dry cleaner. I didn't want to see anyone who might know me. I didn't want to run into a neighbor. I parked the car and sat in the driver's seat for 10 minutes, clutching the check. My mother's voice was a loop in my head. You will embarrass yourself. They will laugh at you. I took a deep breath, fixed my hair in the rearview mirror, and walked inside. The air conditioning was freezing. The bank smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. There was no line. I walked up to the teller, a young man with a name tag that read, Kevin. He looked about 22, bored, and completely unthreatening. Hi, I said, my voice sounding tight to my own ears. I would like to deposit this. I slid the check and my debit card across the counter. I braced myself. I waited for him to frown. I waited for him to call a manager. I waited for the sirens. Kevin picked up the check. He looked at the date. He looked at the amount. He looked at the signature. Okay, he said. That was it. Okay. He typed something into his computer. Since this is a large personal check, there will be a standard hold, he said, his eyes on the screen. 5 business days. $200 will be available tomorrow. The rest once it clears the issuing institution. Is that all right? Yes, I said. That is fine. He stamped the back of the check. He printed a receipt. He handed my card back. Anything else for you today? He asked. No, I said. Thank you. I walked out of the bank feeling lightheaded. It was done. I hadn't been arrested. I hadn't been mocked. I got back in my car and locked the doors, exhaling a breath I felt like I had been holding since the funeral. Now, the waiting game began. For the next 4 days, I checked my banking app every hour. It became a tick. Unlock phone, tap app, scan balance, current balance, $842. Pending transactions. Deposit, $20,000. Every time I looked at it, I expected it to turn red. I expected a notification saying, returned, insufficient funds or returned, stop payment. Mom controlled the estate. Surely she could stop payment. But the check was dated before he died. It was a valid instrument. Unless she had closed the account immediately, or unless Grandpa really didn't have the money, which was impossible. He was frugal and had saved for 50 years. It should clear. I didn't reply to the group chat. I let their texts sit there, unanswered accusations accumulating like digital dust. On the 5th morning, I woke up at 6 o'clock. The sun was just bleeding gray light through my blinds. I rolled over and grabbed my phone. My heart did that familiar nervous flutter. I opened the app. Current balance, $20,842. I sat up in bed. I stared. I refreshed the page. The number stayed. It had cleared. It was real money. It was actually in my account. Grandpa hadn't been confused. He had $20,000 in his checking account, and he had given it to me. I put the phone down on the duvet and covered my face with my hands. A sob welled up in my throat. Not just relief about the money, though God knows that was part of it. It was the validation. He had seen me. He had wanted me to have this. He hadn't forgotten me. My phone rang. I jumped, my heart seizing. It was an unknown number, a toll-free number. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the relief. This was it. This was the police. This was the bank calling to say it was a mistake, that I had to give it back, that I was in trouble. I answered, my voice trembling. Hello? Is this Claire Butler? a woman's voice asked. She sounded calm, professional. Yes, I said, Ms. Butler. This is Sarah from the Fraud Prevention Department at First SENILE Credit Union. I am calling to verify a recent transaction on your account. A mobile deposit of a check ending in 492. I closed my eyes. Here it comes. I am sorry. I didn't mean to. I thought it was real. Yes, I said. I deposited it. Okay, thank you, Sarah said. Her tone didn't shift. She wasn't angry. We just need to verify a few details for security purposes due to the size of the instrument and the age of the account holder on the issuing bank side. Do you have the physical check in your possession? No. The teller took it. I said, but I have the receipt. And do you have the envelope it came in? She asked. The question surprised me. The envelope? Yes. I said, I still have the envelope. Can you confirm the postmark date on the envelope for me? She asked. I scrambled off the bed, running to the kitchen where I had left the little pile of evidence. I grabbed the outer envelope, the one Mom had sent. Then the inner one. I have 2 envelopes. I said, it was forwarded by my mother. But the inner envelope? Wait. I looked at the inner envelope, the one Grandpa had presumably sealed. It didn't have a postmark. It had been in another envelope. Wait, I said. It was inside another envelope, but there is a sticker on the back of the inner one. A sticker? Sarah asked. Yes, I said, squinting at it. It was a small, thermal printed label, the kind you get from a kiosk. It looks like a tracking number from a shipping center. Okay, Sarah said. And do you know the nature of the funds? Was this a gift? A loan? Or payment for services? It was a gift, I said, from my grandfather. He passed away recently. I am sorry for your loss, Sarah said. Her voice was genuine, which threw me off. Thank you. I said, Is there a problem? Is the check bad? No. Ms. Butler, the check has cleared. She said, the funds are available. We just verify these things to protect our customers. We noticed some irregular activity on the issuing account prior to this check, and we are just ensuring that this specific instrument was authorized. You said you have the envelope? Yes. Please keep that, she said, and the receipt, just for your records. Okay, I said. Thank you for your time. Ms. Butler, have a good day. The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, clutching the phone. Irregular activity. Protect our customers. She hadn't accused me. She had asked about the envelope. She had asked if I had it. Why would the bank care about the envelope unless they were trying to prove when it was sent? Unless they were trying to prove who sent it? My stomach turned over. Irregular activity on the issuing account prior to this check. Mom had said Grandpa was confused. She said he was messy. But the bank was saying the activity was irregular. That didn't mean confused. That meant suspicious. I looked at the table, the check receipt, the envelopes, the note. A feeling washed over me, a cold, clarifying instinct that I hadn't felt in years. It was the same feeling I got right before my business partners skipped town. The sudden realization that the story I was being told did not match the facts on the ground. This wasn't about a confused old man. This wasn't about me embarrassing myself. I needed to organize this. I went to my desk and pulled out a fresh manila folder. I didn't have a label maker, so I wrote on the tab in black Sharpie, Grandpa. I took the envelopes. I flattened them out. I took my phone and took high-resolution photos of everything. The front of the envelope Mom sent, the back, the inner envelope with the kiosk sticker, the note, don't let them rewrite me, the deposit receipt. I logged into my bank account and downloaded the image of the cleared check, front and back. I printed it out and stapled it to the receipt. I was not being emotional. I was not being sensitive. I was being administrative. If Mom was right, and this was a mistake, then the paperwork would prove it. But if she was wrong, if she was lying... I looked at the kiosk sticker again. It had a date code. I Googled the format. It was from a self-service shipping center 3 miles from Grandpa's house. The date was the same day the check was written. Grandpa didn't drive anymore. He hadn't driven in 6 months. So how did he get to a shipping kiosk to buy a tracking label for an envelope he never mailed? My brain was spinning, trying to connect dots that were too far apart, but I knew one thing. I was keeping this folder. I was keeping everything. That night, around 7 o'clock, my phone rang again. It was Mom. I stared at the screen. I let it ring 3 times. I took a deep breath, centered myself, and answered. "Hi, Mom. Claire. Sweetheart," she said. My blood ran cold. The tone was all wrong. It was soft, sugary. The voice she used when she was trying to charm a neighbor or smooth over a social gaffe. It was the voice she used when she wanted something. "Hi," I said, keeping my voice flat. "I was just thinking about you," she said. "I know I was a little harsh the other day. I am just so stressed with the estate. You know? It is a lot of work. I know." I said, "I was just worried about you." She continued, "I didn't want you to get your hopes up. I know how hard you have been working, and I know money is tight. I just wanted to save you the disappointment." I didn't say anything. I let the silence stretch. "So," she said, and I could hear the tension vibrating underneath the sweetness. "Did you go to the bank?" "Yes." I said, "And?" she asked. There was a pause. "Did it bounce?" She expected it to bounce. She wanted it to bounce. She needed it to bounce. It cleared. "Mom," I said. The silence on the other end was absolute. It wasn't the silence of confusion. It was the silence of calculation. It was the silence of a chess player realizing their opponent had just made a move they hadn't predicted. "It cleared?" she repeated, her voice losing a fraction of its warmth. "Yes," I said. "The funds are in my account." "Are you sure?" she asked. "Sometimes it looks like it is there, but—" I verified it. I cut her off. "It is cleared." Another silence. Longer this time. I could hear her breathing. I could hear the mask slipping. When she spoke again, the sweetness was gone. The concern was gone. Her voice was flat, hard, and terrifyingly controlled. "We need to talk," she said. "About what?" I asked, though I knew. "We need to meet," she said. "Tomorrow. The diner on Elm. Noon. Bring David." I didn't agree. I didn't say yes. I just held the phone, feeling the weight of the $20,000 in my account and the much heavier weight of the war that had just been declared. "Okay," I said. She hung up without saying goodbye. I looked at my folder on the desk. Grandpa. I opened it and looked at the note one last time. Don't let them rewrite me. I wasn't rewriting him, but I was starting to think that for the first time in my life, I was writing myself. And Mom didn't like the plot twist. I closed the folder. I turned off the kitchen light. I didn't sleep well that night, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel helpless. I felt like I was waiting for the next scene. The Oak Creek Diner was one of those places that had stopped evolving sometime in the late 90s. It smelled of burnt coffee and lemon disinfectant, a scent that always reminded me of Sunday mornings when Grandpa would take me for pancakes while Mom slept in. I pulled my car into the lot, checking my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked tired. The dark circles under my eyes were not easily hidden by concealer. But I set my jaw. I was not going in there to cry. I was going in there to listen. I was 5 minutes early. I had planned this deliberately. I wanted to get a booth, order a water, and establish a physical space before they arrived. It was a small control tactic I had read about in a book on negotiation. But as I walked through the glass double doors, my heart sank. They were already there. Mom and David were seated in a corner booth. The one furthest from the entrance, they were sitting on the same side of the table, facing the empty seat opposite them. It looked less like a lunch date and more like a tribunal. Mom was wearing her pearl earrings and a crisp navy blazer, the uniform she donned when she wanted to project authority. David was in his work polo, his arms crossed over his chest, his posture mirroring hers perfectly. They stopped talking the moment they saw me. I walked over, feeling the familiar regression that always happened when I was around them. Suddenly, I wasn't a 33-year-old woman with a job and an apartment. I was 12 years old, explaining why I had gotten a C in math. Hi, I said, sliding into the vinyl seat opposite them. You are here early. We wanted to make sure we got a quiet table, Mom said. Her voice was tight, the smile on her face not reaching her eyes. She signaled the waitress before I had even settled my purse. Coffee for her, and we are ready to order. I haven't looked at the menu, I said. You usually get the Cobb salad, David said, his voice flat. Just get that. We have a lot to get through. I felt a flash of irritation, hot and sharp. I didn't want the Cobb salad. I wanted to leave, but I nodded at the waitress. Fine, the salad. As soon as the waitress left, the air at the table shifted. It became pressurized. Mom folded her hands on the table. She looked at me with an expression of profound disappointment, the kind that was far more effective than anger. Claire, she began, we need to fix this mess. It is not a mess, I said, keeping my voice steady. It is a deposit. It is a mistake. David cut in. He leaned forward, his elbows resting on the sticky table. Look, we know you are struggling. We know things haven't been great for you financially. But taking advantage of a clerical error or a moment of confusion isn't the way to solve your problems. I stared at him. Grandpa wrote me a check. David, he wrote it, signed it, and mailed it. He mailed it? Mom asked sharply. Her eyes narrowed. Yes, I said. Mom shook her head. A short, dismissive motion. That is impossible. I have been handling his mail for months. I have been organizing his paperwork since the first stroke. Nothing went in or out of that house without me seeing it. The comment landed in the center of the table like a stone. You were handling his mail? I asked. Of course, she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. He was overwhelmed. I had to make sure bills were paid. I had to filter out the junk, the scams. People target the elderly. Claire, I was protecting him. I thought about the envelopes in my folder at home, the tracking sticker. If Mom was filtering his mail, then Grandpa must have known. He must have snuck out to send it. The thought made my chest ache. The image of him, frail and determined, bypassing his own daughter to get something to me. The bank made a mistake clearing it. Mom continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. It happens, but when the estate audit happens, and it will happen soon, they are going to reverse it, and if you have spent that money, you are going to be in very serious legal trouble. We are trying to save you from that. I haven't spent it. I said, good, David said. Then this is easy. We need you to write a check back to the estate account. Today, we can go to the bank together after lunch. I looked from David to Mom. They were a united front. The wall of logic they had built was impressive. Grandpa was confused. The bank was wrong. I was fragile. They were saving me. It was almost comforting to believe them. It would be so easy to just write the check, apologize, and go back to being the good daughter, the one who didn't cause trouble, the one who needed their help. But then I remembered the note. Don't let them rewrite me. I took a sip of water. My hand was shaking. Just a little, but I forced myself to set the glass down gently. I am not going to do that, I said. The silence that followed was absolute. A busboy dropped a fork across the room, and it sounded like a gunshot. Excuse me? Mom said. I said I am not going to transfer the money back. I repeated. The check cleared. The bank verified it. If the estate wants to challenge it, that is fine. But I'm not just handing it back because you say so. Mom's face underwent a slow, terrifying transformation. The concern evaporated. The pity vanished. What was left was cold. Hard granite. You are being incredibly selfish, she hissed. Do you have any idea how complicated probate is? Do you know what you are doing to this family? I am doing what Grandpa wanted. I said, Grandpa didn't know what he wanted. She snapped, her voice rising enough that a couple in the next booth glanced over. He was sick. Claire. His brain wasn't working right. He was paranoid. He thought the nurses were stealing his spoons. And yet, I said, feeling a strange, cold clarity, he wrote a check for $20,000, dated it correctly, and signed it perfectly. It is a prop, Mom said, slamming her hand lightly on the table. It was a prop to make him feel like he still had control. Then why did it clear? I asked. Because the bank is incompetent, David said. Look, Claire, stop playing lawyer. You are going to get hurt. We are offering you a way out. Just give the money back until probate settles. If, by some miracle, the judge decides Grandpa was of sound mind and actually wanted you to have that money, you will get it back. We promise. It is the mature thing to do. Mature. That was their favorite word to use against me. Okay, I said. Mom exhaled, her shoulders dropping. Thank God. I knew you would be reasonable. I wasn't finished. I said, okay, if that is the plan, then put it in writing. Mom froze. What? Send me a formal request, I said, from the estate attorney, stating that the check was cleared in error and that I am returning the funds to be held in trust pending the probate outcome. Have the lawyer sign it. Have you sign it? I watched their faces tighten. It was a subtle reaction, a quick glance between them, a tightening of the jaw. If this was just a standard administrative cleanup, a letter would be nothing. It would be standard procedure. We don't need to bring lawyers into this yet, Mom said, her voice sugary again. We can handle this as a family. Why do you have to be so difficult? I am not being difficult, I said. I am being careful. You said I needed to be more responsible with money. This is me being responsible. I need a paper trail. David laughed. A short, harsh sound. You are unbelievable. You finally get a little money and suddenly you think you are a financial genius. I am not transferring anything without a written request from the estate. I said. Standing up, I realized I couldn't eat. The smell of the grease was making me nauseous. And since you are so sure it is a mistake, that shouldn't be a problem for you to provide. I didn't wait for them to answer. I didn't wait for the salad. I turned and walked out of the diner, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. I could feel their eyes boring into my back. I expected Mom to come running after me, to make a scene. But she didn't. That scared me more than the yelling. I got into my car and locked the doors immediately. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't get the key in the ignition. I sat there for a moment, breathing in the scent of my vanilla air freshener, trying to slow my heart rate. I had done it. I had said no. I started the car and drove. I didn't know where I was going, just away. Away from the diner, away from the look in my mother's eyes. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. I flinched, expecting Mom, but the caller ID was a local number I didn't recognize. I answered it through the car's Bluetooth. Hello? Is this Claire Butler? A woman's voice asked. It wasn't the fraud woman from the bank. This voice was younger, sharper. Yes, I said. Hi, Claire. This is Jennifer. I am calling from the office of Mr. Sterling. I believe he is handling your grandfather's estate. Mr. Sterling. I knew the name. He was the family lawyer Grandpa had used for years. Yes, I said. Great. Jennifer said. Look, I know this is a difficult time, and I apologize for bothering you. We are just trying to finalize the inventory for the initial filing. And your mother mentioned you might have stopped by the house recently. I haven't been to the house since the funeral. I said, Oh, okay, she said. The typing sound in the background paused. It is just that we are seeing some discrepancies in the file. We are looking for any additional financial documents your grandfather might have had in his possession. Did he happen to give you any paperwork or send you anything? My grip on the steering wheel tightened. Mom had called them. She hadn't waited 10 minutes. No, I lied. I haven't received any paperwork. Are you sure? Jennifer asked. Nothing regarding accounts or insurance? No. I said, why? Is something missing? I can't really discuss the details. She said, her voice becoming brisk. We are just trying to make sure we have the complete picture. If you do find anything, please forward it to our office immediately. It is important for the integrity of the estate. I will, I said. She hung up. Discrepancies, integrity of the estate, they were hunting. Mom had told the lawyer I had stolen money, and now they were looking for proof. Or maybe they were looking for what else I knew. I needed help. Real help. Not Google. Not a gut feeling. I pulled into a strip mall parking lot and opened the browser on my phone. I searched for probate attorney near me. I scrolled past the big firms with the glossy headshots and looked for someone small. Someone who looked like they dealt with messy, normal people problems. I found a name: Elena Rosales. Her website was simple: estate planning and probate litigation. Her office was 10 minutes away, above a bakery. I called. They had a cancellation that afternoon. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a small office that smelled faintly of yeast and old books. Elena Rosales was a woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting. She looked at the photos of the check, the note, and the envelopes on my phone. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and took off her reading glasses. "Okay," she said, "here is the reality. You are in a precarious position, but not a hopeless one." "Am I in trouble?" I asked. "Did I steal it?" "No," she said. "Based on what you have shown me, you have a valid negotiable instrument, a personal check, written and signed by the account holder before his death, is legal tender. The fact that the bank honored it is a major point in your favor. Possession is 9/10 of the law, and the cash is in your account." I let out a breath. "However," she continued, raising a finger, "your mother is going to argue two things. First, she will argue lack of capacity. She will say your grandfather didn't understand the nature of his assets or the consequences of his actions when he signed that check. If she can get a doctor to testify that he was medically incompetent on that date, the check could be voided, and you would have to pay it back. He wasn't incompetent," I said. "He was tired, but he knew who I was." "That is good," Elena said. "But the burden of proof will be on the estate to prove he wasn't." "The second thing she will argue is undue influence. She will imply you coerced him into writing it. I wasn't even there." I said, "He mailed it to me." Elena tapped the photo of the envelope on her desk. "That is your shield. The fact that he mailed it, and that he used a tracking service from a kiosk, suggests executive function. It suggests planning. People with advanced dementia generally don't drive to shipping kiosks and navigate touchscreens." She leaned forward. "Claire, you need to understand something. This isn't about the $20,000 anymore. This is about the narrative. Your mother is building a story where she is the protector and you are the predator. To win this, you don't need to scream louder. You need more paper." "What do I do?" I asked. "You document everything," she said. "You keep that money in a separate account. Do not spend a penny of it. If they sue, we want to show the court that you are holding it as a disputed asset, not going on a shopping spree. And you need to find out why your mother is so terrified of this check." "Terrified?" I asked. "Yes," Elena said. $20,000 is a lot of money. But in an estate that includes a house and life insurance, it is usually not worth blowing up a family over, unless that check represents something else, unless it is a loose thread that unravels a sweater she doesn't want unraveled." She handed me a retainer agreement. "I am not telling you to sue your mother. I am telling you to protect yourself. I will charge you a flat fee for a consultation and document review. If it goes to litigation, we will talk again." I signed the paper. It cost me $500 of my own money, not Grandpa's. But as I walked out, I felt something new. I had a teammate. I drove toward Grandpa's house. I didn't know why exactly. Maybe I wanted to feel close to him. Maybe I wanted to see if the house looked different now that I knew it was a battlefield. The house was a 2-story colonial on a quiet street, lined with oak trees. It had always been the one constant in my life. The paint was peeling slightly around the eaves, but it stood solid and reassuring. I pulled into the driveway. Mom's car wasn't there. I walked up to the front door, my key ring in my hand. I had had a key to this house since I was 16. I slid the gold key into the lock and turned. It didn't turn. I frowned and jiggled it. Sometimes the old lock was sticky. I tried again, pulling the door toward me. Nothing. The key wouldn't rotate. I stepped back and looked at the hardware. It looked new. Shiny brass. Not the tarnished bronze I grew up with. She had changed the locks. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I walked around to the side of the garage. There was a keypad there. I knew the code by heart. 1945, the year Grandpa was born. I punched it in. The keypad beeped a harsh, dissonant tone. Error. I tried again. Error. I stood in the driveway, staring at the closed garage door. I was locked out. The house that held my childhood memories, the house where Grandpa had sat with me and dried my tears, was now a fortress I couldn't enter. I took out my phone and texted Mom. "I'm at Grandpa's. My key doesn't work." The response came almost instantly. "Mom, we had to change them for safety. There are a lot of valuable items inside, and we can't have people coming and going. The insurance requires it. People, not you. People. I was people now." I walked back to my car, fighting back hot, angry tears. It wasn't about the safety. It was about possession. She was marking her territory. "Claire?" I turned. Mrs. Gable, the neighbor from next door, was standing by the hedge that separated the properties. She was a tiny woman in her 80s, wearing a gardening hat and holding a pair of shears. "Hi, Mrs. Gable," I said, wiping my eyes quickly. "I am so sorry about your grandfather," she said, shuffling closer. "He was such a lovely man. I miss seeing him on the porch. I miss him too." I said, "I saw you trying the door," she said, lowering her voice. "Your mother had a locksmith out here the day after the funeral, made a terrible racket. She wasted no time." I said bitterly. Mrs. Gable looked at the house, then back at me. She leaned in over the hedge. "You know, I was surprised to hear he passed so suddenly. He seemed to be doing so much better those last few weeks." "Better?" I asked. Mom told me he was confused, that he was declining fast. "Oh, pish," Mrs. Gable said. "He was sharp as a tack. I saw him out here talking to that young man twice a week." "Young man?" I asked. "My brother?" "No, not David," she said. "I know David. This was someone else. Drove a little silver car. Came on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Your grandfather would sit with him on the porch with a folder of papers. They looked very serious, businesslike. Grandpa didn't look confused to me. He looked determined." I felt a chill run down my spine. Someone else. A silver car. Papers. "Did you recognize the car?" I asked. "Or the man?" "No," she said. "But the car had a logo on the side. Something blue. I couldn't read it without my glasses. But your grandfather seemed to trust him." "Thank you, Mrs. Gable," I said. "That is really good to hear." I got back in my car, my mind racing. Mom said he was isolated. Mom said she handled all the mail. Mom said he was confused, but he was meeting a man with a silver car and a blue logo. He was reviewing papers, and he was doing it on the porch, in public view. But apparently unbeknownst to Mom, Grandpa was running an operation. I drove home, the sun setting behind me. When I got to my apartment, I went straight to the folder. I took out the envelope again. I turned on my desk lamp and held the inner envelope under the light. I looked at the kiosk sticker. I had checked the date, but I hadn't really looked at the rest of it. It was faint, but there was a line of text at the bottom of the thermal print. Kiosk ID 4402, the UPS store, 4th Street, and right above it, a timestamp, 14:15, 2:15 in the afternoon. Grandpa took a nap every day at 2. That was the rule. Mom always called him at 3. He had snuck out during his nap time, but he didn't drive. I looked at the sticker again. If he didn't drive, and Mom didn't take him, the man in the silver car. I sat back in my chair. The check wasn't just money. It wasn't just a gift. It was a receipt. It was proof that he had capacity, that he had agency, and that he had a plan. Don't let them rewrite me. He knew they would say he was crazy. He knew they would try to erase his final decisions. So he created a transaction that couldn't be ignored. He sent me $20,000 because he knew it was large enough to trigger an audit, but small enough to clear quickly. He used me. The thought should have hurt, but it didn't. It made me smile. He used me because he trusted me. He trusted me to be the one person who wouldn't just shred the check. He trusted me to be the one person who needed the money enough to cash it, but loved him enough to ask why. He had planted a bomb in the middle of Mom's carefully curated estate narrative, and he had given me the detonator. I picked up my pen and opened a new page in my notebook. Objective 1. Find the man in the silver car. Objective 2. Get the bank statements. Objective 3. Do not give back a single cent. I wasn't Claire the mess-up anymore. I was Claire the investigation, and for the first time since he died. I didn't feel like I was grieving him. I felt like I was working with him. I closed the folder. The fight was on. The email from the credit union arrived on a Tuesday morning, burying itself between a coupon for a car wash and a notification about my student loan interest rate. The subject line was stark in its banality. Action required. Compliance inquiry regarding recent deposit. My stomach did that familiar. Sickening flip it had been doing for a week. The physical manifestation of a fight-or-flight response that had nowhere to go. I opened it. It was formal. Signed by a Department of Risk Management. It did not use the word fraud. It did not use the word crime. It requested a telephonic interview to verify the source of funds and establish chain of custody. They wanted to talk. I sat at my kitchen table, the morning light hitting the dust motes dancing in the air, and I forced myself to breathe. This was the administrative fight. This was the paper trail. If I panicked, I lost. If I screamed, I lost. I replied immediately, offering a slot at 2 o'clock that afternoon. I spent the intervening hours pacing my apartment. I reread the note Grandpa had left me. Don't let them rewrite me. I looked at the photos of the envelopes. I rehearsed my answers. Yes, it was a gift. Yes, I have the envelope. Yes, I am the granddaughter. At 2 o'clock exactly, my phone rang. Ms. Butler? A male voice asked. It was deep, weary, and sounded like it belonged to a man wearing a headset in a windowless room. This is Mr. Henderson from the Compliance Department. Hello, Mr. Henderson. I said, I am recording this call for my own records, if that is all right with you. There was a brief pause. That is your right. Ms. Butler, though our line is also recorded, I understand. I said, I pressed the record button on my laptop app. We are conducting a standard review of the check deposited into your account on the 14th. Mr. Henderson began, due to the amount, $20,000, and the status of the issuing account. We need to clarify a few details. You stated this was a gift? Yes. I said, from my grandfather. And you were in possession of the physical instrument? Yes. It was mailed to me. I have the envelope and the tracking information. Good. He said. He sounded like he was checking a box. The date on the check precedes the date of death by 4 days. Can you confirm you had no contact with the account holder on that day? I didn't. I said, I was at work. I can prove my location if needed. That won't be necessary at this stage, he said. Then the tone of the call shifted. The paper shuffling stopped. Ms. Butler, he said, and his voice dropped a register. We are looking at the history of the issuing account. The check you deposited cleared, and the funds are yours. However, that transaction triggered a retrospective look at the account activity over the last 6 months. I gripped the edge of the table. We see a pattern here that is distinctive, he said. Distinctive how? I asked. Are you aware of any other individuals who had access to your grandfather's checkbook or debit card? He asked. My mother, I said. She handled his mail and his bills. She told me she was managing his finances. I see. Mr. Henderson said, do you know why your grandfather's account had repeated cash withdrawals in round numbers shortly before his death? I blinked. Cash withdrawals? Yes, he said, starting about 8 weeks ago, withdrawals of $2,000, $3,000, always at the teller window, always in cash. No, I said, the word coming out as a whisper. I didn't know that. Grandpa didn't use cash. He used his card for everything. He liked the rewards points. There was a silence on the line that felt heavy with implication. Ms. Butler. Mr. Henderson said carefully, if you have any documentation regarding who was assisting your grandfather during that period, or any logs of his care, it would be helpful for our review. We are not accusing you of anything, but when an account goes from dormant to active with high-volume cash exits, and then a large check clears post-mortem, we have to ask questions. I understand, I said. The call ended 2 minutes later. I sat there, the phone warm against my ear long after the screen had gone dark. Cash withdrawals. Mom had told me Grandpa was confused. She had told me he was paranoid. She had said she was protecting him from scams. But scams usually happened online. Scams were wire transfers to Nigeria or gift cards bought at Target. Scams weren't someone walking into a bank branch and taking out $3,000 in bills, unless the scammer was the one driving the car. I stood up and went to my evidence board, which was really just my refrigerator door where I had taped up the printouts. I added a sticky note. Cash withdrawals. If Mom was taking cash, she was hiding the paper trail. You can't trace cash once it leaves the teller window. That was why she hated the check. The check was a breadcrumb. The check was a spotlight. My phone buzzed. It was my cousin, Emily. Emily was the daughter of my mother's sister. We used to be close, the kind of cousins who shared secrets at Thanksgiving, but we had drifted apart as we got older. She was sweet, anxious, and terrified of conflict. She usually avoided the family drama, which meant if she was texting me, the drama had reached a boiling point. Emily. Hey, Claire, can I call you? It's important. I called her immediately. Hey, I said, Claire, she breathed. She sounded like she was hiding in a closet. Her voice was a hushed, frantic whisper. Oh my God, are you okay? I am fine. I said, why? I just got off the phone with Aunt Linda. She said, Linda was my mother. She called my mom, and then she called me. Claire, she is telling everyone that you are having a breakdown. A breakdown? I repeated, my voice flat. She said you stole a check from Grandpa's house while he was dying, Emily said, rushing the words out. She said you forged the date. She said you are in financial trouble and you snapped. She told Aunt Sarah that they might have to get a restraining order because you were screaming at her in a diner. I closed my eyes. It was impressive. Really, the speed of the narrative construction. She had taken the diner meeting, where I had been calm and she had been hysterical, and inverted it completely. I wasn't screaming. Emily, I said, and I didn't steal it. Grandpa mailed it to me. I know, Emily said. I mean, I don't know. But I know you. You are not a thief, and you are definitely not crazy. But Claire, she is convincing. She was crying. She said she was worried you were going to spend the money on drugs or something. Drugs? I let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. I have a credit card bill and student loans. I don't have a drug problem. I know, Emily said. But she is spinning this story, and people are believing her because you have been distant lately, and because she is the executor. She is isolating me. I said, it is a preemptive strike. If I show up with evidence later, everyone will just think it is part of my mania. What are you going to do? Emily asked. I am going to tell the truth, I said, but not the way she wants me to. I hung up with Emily and opened my laptop. I stared at the blank white screen of a new email draft. My instinct was to rage. I wanted to write a 10-page manifesto detailing every slight, every manipulation, every moment my mother had dismissed me. I wanted to scream in all caps, she is lying. But I remembered Elena, my attorney. Document everything. Documentation matters more than emotion. If I sent a crazy email, I proved Mom right. If I sent a defensive email, I looked guilty. I needed to be boring. I needed to be undeniable. I typed in the addresses of my aunts, my uncles, and my cousins. I included Mom and David. Subject: update regarding Grandpa's check. Dear family, I am writing to clear up some confusion regarding the check Grandpa sent me shortly before his death. The check for $20,000 was written and signed by Grandpa on Tuesday the 14th, and mailed to me via a tracked envelope which I have in my possession. I deposited it, and the bank cleared the funds after a standard verification process. I am currently cooperating fully with the credit union's compliance department regarding their internal review of the estate's recent account activity. I have preserved all documentation, including the envelope, the note, and the bank records, and I'm happy to share copies with anyone who wishes to see the facts for themselves. Best. Claire. I read it over. It was cold. It was clinical. It mentioned the internal review of the estate's recent account activity, a phrase that was technically true but carried a heavy, unspoken threat. It signaled that the bank was looking at them, not just me. I hit send. 10 minutes later, my phone blew up with notifications. Texts from Mom, texts from David. I didn't read them. I swiped them away. I wasn't playing their game anymore. I was playing Grandpa's game. I needed the next piece of the puzzle. I needed the man in the silver car. I drove back to the neighborhood the next afternoon. I parked 2 streets over and walked, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses, feeling ridiculous but necessary. I didn't want Mom to see my car. I found Mrs. Gable in her garden again. She was weeding her petunias with violent efficiency. Mrs. Gable? I called softly from the sidewalk. She looked up, squinting. Claire, is that you? Why are you sneaking around like a cat burglar? I am trying to avoid my mother, I admitted, walking up to the fence. Smart girl, she grunted. She has been over here twice asking if I saw you. Did you tell her about the man in the silver car? I asked. I didn't tell her a damn thing. Mrs. Gable said, I told her I mind my own business, which is a lie, but a polite one. I smiled. Mrs. Gable, you said the car had a logo. Do you remember what it looked like? Was it a bank logo? She tapped her chin with a dirty trowel. No, it was blue. A shield, maybe, or a seal. It said, Mobile something. Mobile signature? No. Rapid seal? Fast seal? I guessed. No. She said, wait, I remember the word journal. Journal mobile notary. That was it. It was written in blue cursive on the door. Journal mobile notary. Thank you. Mrs. Gable? I said, you are a lifesaver. I hurried back to my car. I sat in the driver's seat and Googled it. Journal Mobile Notary Services. It was a small business based in the next town over. I called the number, Journal Mobile Notary. This is Brian. Hi, Brian, I said, keeping my voice professional. My name is Claire Butler. I am calling regarding a service you performed recently for my grandfather, Arthur Butler. At address? There was a pause. I am sorry. I can't discuss client transactions without a subpoena or the client's permission. I understand. I said, I am not asking for the content of the documents. My grandfather passed away recently, and there is some confusion about the date of his last signature. We have a witness who saw your vehicle at his house. I just need to confirm the date you were there so we can close out his file. I held my breath. I was banking on the fact that notaries are precise people. They keep journals. They like accuracy. I can't give you details, Brian said, his voice guarding the gate. Please, I said, just the date. I am trying to prove he was lucid. My family is trying to say he was confused. There was a long silence. Then I heard the sound of pages turning. I was at that address on the 14th, Brian said quietly. At 2:30 in the afternoon, the 14th, the same day the check was dated, the same day the tracking sticker was printed at 2:15. And he was lucid? I asked. Ma'am, Brian said, his voice firming up. I don't notarize signatures for people who don't know what day it is. I performed a standard capacity check. He knew the president, he knew the date, and he knew exactly what he was signing. He was sharp. Thank you. Brian, I whispered. Thank you. He hung up. I had the timeline. 2:15 p.m. Grandpa, or someone helping him, buys the tracking label at the kiosk. 2:30 p.m. The notary arrives at the house. Post 2:30 p.m. Grandpa mails the envelope. He didn't just write a check. He notarized something. What did he notarize? A check doesn't need a notary. A will does. A power of attorney does. An affidavit does. Grandpa had created a legal document 4 days before he died, and Mom didn't know about it. I needed to get into the house. I needed to see his desk. I texted Emily again. Claire. Do you have a key to Grandpa's? Emily. Yeah. Mom gave it to me to water the plants while they figure out the cleaning service. Why? Claire. I need to get something sentimental. Mom changed the locks and won't give me a key. Please. Emily. Claire. If Aunt Linda finds out. Claire. She won't. I just need 10 minutes. Please. M. For Grandpa. 3 dots danced on the screen for an agonizing minute. Emily. Meet me there in 20. Park around the block. The house smelled of stale air and lemon polish when we walked in. It was a smell that used to mean comfort. But now it smelled like a crime scene. The furniture was exactly where it had always been. But the surfaces were too clean. The clutter of Grandpa's life, his magazines, his reading glasses, his half-finished crosswords, was gone. Mom had sanitized it. You have 10 minutes, Emily whispered, standing by the front door like a lookout. I am serious. Claire, if she pulls in, I am dead. I ran to the study. The desk was a massive mahogany piece from the 1950s. It was the desk where he paid his bills, where he wrote his letters, where he fixed broken toys. It was cleared off now, except for a lamp and a stapler. I opened the drawers. Empty. Mom had cleared them out. No files, no papers, no old checkbooks. I felt a surge of panic. Had she found it? I remembered the game we used to play when I was 7. Hide the treasure. Grandpa would hide a silver dollar in the desk, and I had to find it. He had shown me the trick. It's not a secret vault. Claire Bear. He had said, it's just using the space nobody looks at. I pulled the center drawer out all the way. Most drawers stop. This one had a release latch underneath. I clicked it and pulled the drawer completely out of the desk. Setting it on the floor, I reached my hand into the empty cavity of the desk, feeling along the wooden runners that held the drawer up. There, taped to the underside of the desktop, just above where the drawer would sit, was a flat wooden tray. It was invisible unless you removed the drawer entirely. My fingers brushed against paper. I pulled the tape loose. The tray slid out. It wasn't a stack of cash. It wasn't a new will. It was a single index card, covered in Grandpa's handwriting. But the handwriting wasn't shaky. It was deliberate. It was a list of dates and numbers. October 4th, $2,000. Cash, Linda. October 12th, $3,000. Cash, Linda. Repairs. November 1st, $2,500. Cash, David. November 15th, $4,000. Transfer to H.R. LLC. And at the bottom, a note. If they say I'm confused, check the transfers. I stared at the card. He had been tracking them. He knew. He knew they were taking money. Cash. Linda. Transfer to H.R. LLC. He hadn't stopped them. He had documented them. Why? Why let them steal? Because he was dying. Because he was weak. Or maybe because he knew that if he confronted them, they would cut him off completely. They would put him in a home. They would take away his phone. So he played along. He played the confused old man. And he wrote it all down for me. I heard a car door slam outside. Claire! Emily hissed from the hallway. Someone is here! I shoved the index card into my bra. I slid the wooden tray back into place. I jammed the drawer back onto its runners and shoved it closed just as the front door opened. I froze. Hello? Mom's voice echoed through the house. Emily? Is that you? I saw your car. I looked at Emily. She was pale, her eyes wide with terror. Yeah. Aunt Linda? Emily called out, her voice squeaking. I forgot my watering can. I was trapped in the study. There was no other exit except the window. And it was painted shut. Mom's heels clicked on the hardwood. She was coming down the hall. I did the only thing I could do. I stepped out of the study and into the hallway. Right in front of her, she stopped dead. She was wearing a trench coat and holding a Starbucks cup. Her eyes went from Emily to me. And the temperature in the hallway dropped 20 degrees. What are you doing here? She asked. Her voice was so quiet it was barely a sound. I came to say goodbye to the house, I said, keeping my face blank. Emily let me in. Don't be mad at her. I begged her. Mom looked at me with a mixture of loathing and triumph. You are trespassing. she said. I could call the police. Go ahead. I said, I am leaving. I walked past her. I could smell her perfume, a cloying floral scent that made me want to gag. As I reached the door, she spoke again. You sent that email, she said, to the family. I did. I said, not turning around. You are making a mistake, Claire. She said, you think you are being smart. You think you are exposing something. But all you are doing is showing everyone how unstable you really are. I turned then. I looked her right in the eye. Did you fix the repairs? Mom? I asked. She blinked. What? The repairs. I said, the ones you needed the cash for in October. Her face went slack. For a split second, the mask dropped, and I saw pure, unadulterated fear. She didn't know I knew. She didn't know about the index card burning against my skin. Get out, she whispered. I walked out the door, past a trembling Emily, and into the fresh air. I didn't run. I walked to my car, got in, and drove away. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline. I had the map. I drove straight to Elena's office. I didn't have an appointment, but her receptionist saw my face and waved me back. I put the index card on her desk. Elena read it. She put her glasses on. She read it again. This is admissible? I asked. It is hearsay unless we can corroborate it, she said. But it gives us the roadmap for the subpoena. We don't need to fish anymore. We know exactly what dates to ask for. H, R, L, LC. That is specific. She looked up at me. Claire, you need to be very careful. If this is true, your mother and brother have committed elder financial abuse. That is a felony. If they realize you have this, they will escalate. They already have. I said, they are telling everyone I'm crazy. Elena nodded. Typical. Discredit the witness. We need to lock this down. We are going to file a petition for a full accounting of the estate. We are going to attach the check and the notary's affidavit. We will get him to swear he was there. And we are going to ask for the bank statements for these specific dates. My phone buzzed. I looked down. It was a text from David. David, Mom just called me. She is a wreck. You are destroying this family. If you don't wire the money back by Friday, you will regret it. We will sue you for fraud, legal fees, and emotional distress. We will bury you in debt you will never get out of. Fix this. I read it out loud to Elena. She smiled. A sharp, predatory smile. Forward that to me, she said. And do not reply. I took a screenshot. I hit forward. Then I did one last thing. I opened my banking app. I navigated to the Open New Account tab. I selected High Yield Savings. I named the account The Truth. I transferred exactly $20,000 from my checking account into the new account. I watched the numbers move. My checking account went back to its meager 3 figures. The new account held the fortune. I wasn't spending it. I wasn't paying off my loans. I wasn't fixing my car. I was holding it hostage. I looked at the phone, at David's threat. You will regret it. I thought about the index card. I thought about the notary. I thought about the cash withdrawals. I put the phone down. No, David. I thought, I don't think I will. The email from Mr. Sterling's office was titled Status Conference. Estate of Arthur Butler. It sounded administrative. It sounded boring. It sounded like the kind of meeting where we would sit around a mahogany table, drink lukewarm water from crystal pitchers, and sign documents that smelled like toner. I prepared for it like I was preparing for a deposition. I wore my only suit, a charcoal gray number I had bought for a job interview 3 years ago. It was a little tight across the shoulders now, but it made me feel armored. I met Elena, my attorney, in the lobby of the building downtown. You look ready, Elena said, scanning my face. I feel nauseous, I admitted. Good, she said. Nausea keeps you sharp. Remember the rules. Let them talk. They will want to fill the silence. Let them. You are the vault. You only open when I tell you to. We took the elevator to the 14th floor. Mr. Sterling's office was exactly as I imagined. Plush beige carpets, oil paintings of ships and storms, and a receptionist who looked like she judged people for a living. We were led to the main conference room. I expected to see Mr. Sterling, the kindly old man who had helped Grandpa with his taxes for 20 years, and he was there, sitting at the head of the table, looking tired. But he wasn't alone. My mother was there, David was there, and sitting next to Mom was a man I had never seen before. He was younger than Sterling, with slicked back hair and a suit that cost more than my car. He had a legal pad in front of him and a pen that he was clicking rhythmically. Click, click, click. They had brought a shark. Claire. Mom said. She didn't stand up. Her voice was trembling slightly. A performance of fragile grief. Thank you for coming. I nodded and sat down next to Elena. Who is this? Elena asked, nodding at the shark. This is Mr. Vance, Mom said. He is assisting me with the administration of the estate. Elena didn't blink. I thought Mr. Sterling was the estate attorney. I am Mr. Sterling said, clearing his throat. But Mrs. Butler felt that additional counsel was necessary given the complexities that have arisen. Complexities. I thought, me? I was the complexity. Mr. Vance stopped clicking his pen. He leaned forward, clasping his hands. Let us cut to the chase. We are here because there is a significant asset dispute. Ms. Butler, you are currently in possession of $20,000 that belongs to the estate. It was a gift, I said. Mr. Vance smiled, a tight, condescending expression. We have reviewed the medical records. We have statements from his primary care physician indicating that your grandfather was suffering from advanced cognitive decline in the final weeks. He lacked the capacity to execute financial instruments. Therefore, the check is void. Elena touched my arm. A signal to wait. Do you have a declaration of incapacity signed by a judge prior to his death? Elena asked. Mr. Vance's smile didn't waver. We have a retrospective medical opinion. So, no, Elena said. We are prepared to file for a formal finding of incapacity, Vance said, his voice hardening, which would not only invalidate the check, but would likely trigger a fraud investigation regarding how Ms. Butler obtained it. However, in the interest of family harmony, we are offering a settlement. Ms. Butler returns the funds immediately. The estate agrees not to pursue criminal charges for theft and elder abuse. The room went silent. Theft. Elder abuse. I looked at Mom. She was looking down at her hands, twisting a ring on her finger. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She was letting this stranger threaten to send her daughter to jail. I felt the anger rise in my chest, hot and suffocating. I wanted to scream about the notary. I wanted to scream about the index card in my bra. I wanted to flip the table. But I heard Grandpa's voice. What is the plan now? I took a sip of water. I set the glass down. I am happy to provide my documents. I said. My voice was steady. I have the envelope with the tracking number. I have the receipt. Mr. Vance waved a hand dismissively. Irrelevant if he didn't know what he was doing, and, I continued, ignoring him. Before we discuss returning any assets, I would like to review the financial standing of the estate. Specifically, I am requesting copies of the bank statements for the last 18 months. Mom's head snapped up. Mr. Vance narrowed his eyes. Why? Because my client is a beneficiary, Elena said smoothly, and she has concerns about the liquidity of the accounts. If you are claiming $20,000 is breaking the bank, we need to see why the bank is broken. We are not releasing 18 months of records, Vance said. That is a fishing expedition. We will provide the final accounting upon closure of probate. We want them now, I said, or we will subpoena them. Mom let out a small, sharp sound. This is ridiculous. I have kept meticulous records. I have been his caregiver for 2 years. I have receipts for everything. She reached into her oversized tote bag and pulled out a binder. It was thick, organized with color-coded tabs. She slammed it onto the table. You want to see where the money went? She demanded. Look at the medical supplies. Look at the groceries. Look at the reimbursement for my time. Do you know how much it costs to take care of a dying man? She slid the binder toward me. It was a dare. She thought I wouldn't look. She thought I would be intimidated by the sheer volume of paper. I opened the binder. It was a log, a spreadsheet, printed out in landscape mode. Date, description, amount. September 4th, groceries, $145. September 4th, caregiving stipend, 8 hours, $200. September 6th, pharmacy, $45. I scanned the dates. My eyes caught a cluster of entries in October. October 12th, emergency caregiving, 24 hours, $600, October 12th. Medical supplies/incontinence, $150, October 12th. Special dietary food, $85, October 12th. I froze. I looked up at Mom. October 12th? Yes, she said, her chin high. He was having a bad week. He was bedridden. I had to stay over. I had to buy special pads. It was a nightmare. I looked at the log again. Emergency caregiving, bedridden. Mom, I said quietly. October 12th was the fall luncheon at the community center. The room went deadly silent. What? Vance asked. The senior center fall luncheon. I said, Grandpa went every year. I know he went this year because he sent me a selfie with Mrs. Gable. They were eating pumpkin pie. He wasn't bedridden. He was wearing his blue sweater and winning a raffle. Mom's face went pale. You are mistaken. That must have been a different day. No. I said, I have the photo on my phone. It is dated October 12th. Timestamp 12:30. I looked at the entry again. Caregiving stipend, 24 hours. If he was at the lunch, I said, looking at Vance, why is the estate paying you $600 for 24-hour emergency bedside care? Vance pulled the binder back toward him. He looked at the page. He looked at Mom. Mrs. Butler may have the dates confused, Vance said, but his voice lacked its earlier punch. It was a chaotic time. It seems very specific for being confused, Elena said, and there are a lot of these entries, round numbers, large amounts. This is insulting, Mom said, standing up. I cared for him. I sacrificed my life for him. And you are nitpicking dates? We are looking for the truth. I said. Elena leaned forward. Given the discrepancy in the self-reported reimbursement logs, we are going to insist on a forensic accountant. No, David said. He spoke for the first time. He looked angry. That is completely unnecessary. Forensic accountants cost thousands of dollars. You are just draining the estate to make a point. It is wasteful. If everything is above board, it won't take them long. Elena said. We refuse, Vance said. We will not authorize estate funds for a witch hunt. Then we will petition the court to appoint one, Elena said, and we will ask that the cost come out of the executor's fees. The tension in the room was brittle. It felt like something was about to snap. I think we are done for today, Vance said, closing his folder. We will be in touch regarding the petition to recover the $20,000. We stood up. As we were filing out, my Uncle Ted caught my eye. Ted was Mom's younger brother. He was a quiet man who usually did whatever his sister told him. He had been sitting in the corner chair, saying nothing the entire meeting. He waited until Mom and David were arguing with Vance by the elevator. Then he stepped closer to me. Claire, he said. His voice was low. Hi, Uncle Ted. I said, I didn't want to say anything in there. He stammered, looking over his shoulder, but hearing you talk about the check. What is it? I asked. Grandpa told me he sent me something too. Ted said, about 2 weeks before he died, he called me and said, Ted, I sent you a little something for the boat repair. $500. I stared at him. Did you get it? No, Ted said. I assumed he forgot to mail it, or that he imagined it. Linda told me his mind was going, so I never asked. He didn't forget. I whispered. Ted looked at me, his eyes sad and frightened. You think she took it? I think you should check your mail. Ted, I said, or ask the post office if anything was returned. Claire! Mom's voice echoed from the elevator bank. We are leaving. Ted flinched. He stepped back. Be careful. Claire, he muttered. Then he hurried away to join the pack. I walked out of the building with Elena. The city air felt cold and clean after the stifling heat of the conference room. That was a win. Elena said, "It didn't feel like a win." I said, "They are lying. They are faking logs." "Yes," she said, "and they are bad at it. The pumpkin pie selfie? That was brilliant. I didn't plan it." I said, "I just remembered. That is how you win." Elena said, "You know the facts. They only know the lie. Keeping a lie consistent is hard work." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked it. It wasn't a text. It was a voicemail. I stopped on the sidewalk. It was from the credit union. "Mr. Henderson." I played it, holding the phone to my ear against the noise of the traffic. "Ms. Butler, this is Mr. Henderson. I am calling with an update on our internal review. I cannot go into specifics on a voicemail, but I wanted to inform you that our investigation has flagged a series of transfers to an external account established 30 days prior to the account holder's death. This account does not match any known vendors. We are obligated to report this activity to the executor of the estate this afternoon, since you are a party to the inquiry. I wanted you to be aware that the estate will be receiving a formal notice of irregular activity. Thank you." My heart hammered. They found the LLC. Mr. Henderson had found the shell company, and he was telling Mom. She is going to know. I told Elena, "The bank is notifying her today about the external transfers." Elena's eyes widened. "That explains why she was so desperate to get your check back. She isn't worried about the $20,000. She is worried that the audit triggered by your check is going to uncover the real theft. The shell company." I said, "HRLLC. If the bank flags it as fraud," Elena said, "the accounts will be frozen. Mom loses control." I looked up at the skyscraper we had just left. Mom was up there, probably getting the call right now. She was about to realize that her problem wasn't her daughter being difficult. Her problem was a federal regulation algorithm. I went home. I didn't know what to do with myself. I felt like I was waiting for an explosion. At 6 o'clock, there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole. It was Mom. She was alone. She wasn't wearing the trench coat. She was wearing a cardigan I remembered from my childhood. She looked small. I opened the door, but I left the chain on. "Mom?" "Claire." She said. Her voice was wet. "Can I come in? Please?" I hesitated. My training said no. My lawyer said no. But she was my mother, and she looked broken. I closed the door, slid the chain off, and opened it. She walked in and sat on my cheap IKEA sofa. She didn't look at the apartment with her usual disdain. She just stared at her hands. I don't know what to do," she whispered. "What is wrong?" I asked. Staying standing. I stayed near the door. The bank called. She said, "They are saying terrible things. They are saying there are transfers that I authorized that look suspicious." "Did you authorize them?" I asked. She looked up at me, and her eyes filled with tears. "I was trying to protect him." "Claire, you don't understand. Protect him from what?" I asked. "From the scammers," she cried. "He was giving money away. He was subscribing to magazines. He was buying coins from the TV. I had to move the money to keep it safe. I set up that other account to hold it for him." "To hold it?" I asked. "Or to spend it?" "To hold it," she insisted. "I haven't touched a dime of it. It is all there." I looked at her. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that this was all a misunderstanding, that she was just a frantic, overbearing daughter trying to save her father from his own generosity. But then I remembered the index card. Check the transfers. I remembered the caregiving log with the fake dates. I remembered the changed locks. "Mom," I said gently, "if you moved it to protect it, why did you create fake logs to justify withdrawing it as cash?" She froze. The tears stopped instantly. "I didn't create fake logs," she said. Her voice shifted. It became mechanical. He was in a state of cognitive fragmented confusion. He required constant supervision. The expenses were justified by the level of care. There it was. Cognitive fragmented confusion. That wasn't Mom. Mom didn't use words like cognitive fragmented confusion. Mom used words like crazy or senile. Who told you to say that? I asked. No one. She said, that is the medical term. It sounds like a script. Mom, I said, eh? She stood up. Her vulnerability vanished, as if it had never existed. You are being cruel, she said. I came here to make peace. I came here to tell you that if you just give the check back, we can make all of this go away. I can explain the transfers to the bank. I can fix it. But I need that $20,000 back in the main account to balance the ledger before the audit goes deeper. To balance the ledger. She needed my money to cover the hole she had dug. I can't do that. Mom, I said. She looked at me with pure hatred. You are going to regret this, she said. You are destroying your own family for 20 grand. I hope it is worth it. She slammed the door on her way out. I locked it. I put the chain back on. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood. It wasn't worth it. None of this was worth it. I would give the money back in a heartbeat if it meant I could have my grandfather back, if it meant I could have a mother who didn't look at me like an enemy. But giving the money back wouldn't fix the family. The family was broken long before the check arrived. The check just turned on the lights. I went to my computer. I typed an email to Elena. Elena, Mom just came over. She admitted to moving the money to an external account for safety. She also used a rehearsed phrase regarding his capacity. I think she is being coached to build a specific defense. I am done with informal meetings. From now on, I want a mediated family meeting. Neutral ground, agreed agenda, and all communication goes through you. I hit send. The next morning, I woke up to a notification from the court system. Elena had set up an alert for any filings related to the estate. New filing. Petition for temporary restraining order and freeze of assets. Petitioner. Estate of Arthur Butler. Respondent. Claire Butler. I opened the document on my phone. It was a wall of legal text, but one paragraph stood out, highlighted in my mind like neon. The petitioner alleges that the respondent, Claire Butler, engaged in a harmful act against the estate by exerting undue influence over the decedent to procure a financial instrument in the amount of $20,000. This harmful act has caused liquidity issues and emotional distress to the heirs. The petitioner requests that the respondent's assets be frozen and that she be removed from any future beneficiary status. A harmful act. Grandpa wrote me a check to save me. He wrote me a check to tell me he loved me. He wrote me a check to help me fight. And they were calling it a harmful act. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. Hot and angry. They wanted a villain? Fine. I wiped the tear away. I would be the villain. But I would be the villain who had the receipts. I picked up the phone and called the forensic accountant Elena had recommended. When can you start? I asked. The subpoena Elena filed didn't get us everything. The estate's lawyers, Mr. Vance and his shark-like team, had fought it tooth and nail, filing motions to quash, claiming undue burden, and arguing that the estate's privacy outweighed my baseless suspicions. But the judge had granted a limited scope. We got the bank statements for the checking account for the 6 months prior to Grandpa's death. 6 months? That was all we had. But as it turned out, 6 months was enough to see the bleeding. I sat in Elena's conference room, the air conditioner humming a low, constant note. On the table between us lay the stack of paper, fresh from the printer, still warm. Look at the dates, Elena said. She didn't sound triumphant. She sounded disgusted. I pulled the stack closer. Elena had already gone through them with a highlighter. Yellow meant a cash withdrawal. Pink meant a transfer to an external account. The pages looked like a sunset. There was so much yellow and pink. I don't see the pattern yet, I said, scanning the lines. It just looks like a lot of spending. Look at the calendar, Elena said, sliding a second sheet of paper toward me. We cross-referenced the withdrawals with the medical reimbursement log your mother submitted. The one she tried to use to justify the expenses. I looked. September 12th. Neurologist appointment. Consultation for tremors. September 12th. Cash withdrawal. $2,000. September 28th. Cardiology. Follow-up. change of medication. September 29th, cash withdrawal, $2,500. October 14th, emergency room visit, dehydration. October 15th, transfer, $4,000. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. They waited until he was sick. I whispered, every time. Elena said, every single significant withdrawal happens within 48 hours of a medical event. When he was tired, when he was scared, when he was likely medicated, or just wanting to go home and sleep. It wasn't just theft, it was predation. They were using his vulnerability as a debit card. I could picture it. Mom driving him home from the neurologist, his hands shaking, his mind worried about the diagnosis. And her stopping at the bank, Dad, just sign this slip. It is for the copay. It is for the medicine. And he would sign it, because he trusted her, because she was his daughter. Is this proof of incapacity? I asked. No, Elena said. In a court of law, they could argue that these medical events made him realize he needed to gift money while he still could. They will say he was liquidating assets to pay for future care. It is circumstantial, but it is ugly. I said, it is very ugly. Elena agreed. But here is the smoking gun. She flipped to the last page of the statements, the transfers, the ones that went to H, RLLC. We had seen the name on the index card Grandpa left me. H, R, LLC. I had assumed it stood for something generic. Human resources? Home renovations? Our forensic accountant, a man named Mr. Gao, who spoke in paragraphs that were almost entirely devoid of emotion, had run the trace. H, R, stands for Home Restoration, Elena said. Specifically, Horizon Restoration, LLC. Horizon Restoration. I repeated. I have never heard of them. Grandpa didn't have any restoration work done. He complained for 2 years that the back porch was rotting and nobody would fix it. Exactly, Elena said. Mr. Gao pulled the Articles of Incorporation for Horizon Restoration, LLC. It is a Delaware entity, registered 6 months ago, very standard shell company structure, but look at the mailing address for the registered agent. She pointed to a line of text at the bottom of the summary. 1400 Parkway Drive, Suite 204. I know that address, I said, frowning. That is the shipping center near the mall, the one with the private mailboxes. And do you know who works in the office park directly across the street from 1400 Parkway Drive? Elena asked. I thought about the geography of our town. The office park, the glass buildings. David, I said, my brother works at the tech consultancy there. Elena nodded. She pulled out one last document. It was a photocopy of the LLC's banking resolution. The document that authorized someone to open the account. It required a signature. It was a scrawl. It didn't look like David's normal signature. It looked like someone trying to write with their non-dominant hand, but the loop on the D was unmistakable. It was the same loop he used when he signed birthday cards. David, I whispered, it wasn't just Mom. I had spent the last 2 weeks thinking Mom was the villain, and David was just her loyal soldier, the golden boy protecting his mother. I thought he was blind to what she was doing, but he wasn't blind. He was the bank. Mom was the extractor. She was the one driving Grandpa to the doctors, getting the signatures, pulling the cash. But she needed somewhere to put the money that wasn't her own account, somewhere that wouldn't flag Medicaid look-back periods or trigger immediate suspicion. So David built her a bucket, Horizon Restoration, LLC, a fake company to invoice Grandpa for fake repairs. Grandpa had complained about the repairs. I paid for the repairs, and they never finished. I thought he was complaining about a contractor ghosting him. He was complaining about his grandson. I felt sick, physically, violently sick. David, who lectured me about responsibility. David, who told me I was embarrassing the family. David, who drove a Tesla and vacationed in emotional superiority. He was laundering money from our dying grandfather. We have them. I said. My voice trembled. This is fraud. This is wire fraud. We have a very strong case for civil fraud. Elena corrected. Criminal is harder. We have to prove intent. We have to prove services weren't rendered. They could claim they were planning to do the repairs. But we have leverage, I said. Massive leverage. Elena said, this connects David directly to the theft. He has a professional license. He has a reputation. If this goes public, if this hits a courtroom, he loses a lot more than his share of the inheritance. So what do we do? I asked. Do we call the police? Elena leaned back. Not yet. If we go nuclear now, they might destroy evidence. They might liquidate the LLC and move the money offshore. We want to trap them. We want them to admit it. How? We make them an offer. Elena said, a trap. I went home that night carrying the weight of the truth like a stone in my stomach. I couldn't look at the group chat. I couldn't look at photos of David. The betrayal felt different than the one with Mom. Mom was chaotic. Her love had always been conditional. But David was supposed to be the rational one. The next morning, the family pressure arrived. It didn't come from Mom or David. It came from the outer rim. Aunt Sarah called me at 7 a.m. Claire, she said, she didn't say hello. I just got off the phone with your mother. She is in the hospital. My heart stopped. What? She had a panic attack. Sarah said, her blood pressure spiked. They thought it was a heart stroke. She is fine. They are releasing her. But the doctor said it is stress. Severe, acute stress. I gripped the phone. Is she okay? She is heartbroken. Claire, Sarah said. Her voice was icy. She is trying to mourn her father, and her own daughter is dragging her through a legal nightmare over $20,000. It is not about the $20,000. I said, it is always about money with you, isn't it? Sarah snapped. We all know you have been struggling. We all know you have debts. But to do this? To accuse your mother of whatever you are accusing her of? To freeze the estate so nobody can get anything? She froze the estate. I said, she filed the petition because you stole from it. Sarah yelled, I didn't steal. I said, Grandpa gave it to me. He was senile. Sarah screamed, he didn't know what he was doing. And now you are killing your mother over a clerical error. If you don't drop this, Claire, if you don't fix this, don't bother coming to Christmas. Don't bother calling me. You are done. Do you understand? You are out. She hung up. I sat on the edge of my bed. The silence in the apartment was deafening. You are out. It was the thing I had feared most my whole life, being exiled, being the problem. But as I sat there, listening to the traffic outside, I realized something. I wasn't losing my family. I had already lost them. I was mourning a family that didn't exist. I was mourning the idea of a supportive aunt, a loving mother, a protective brother. But the reality was a woman who gaslit me, a brother who stole from a dying man, and an aunt who didn't ask a single question before condemning me. If being in meant accepting that, I didn't want to be in. I stood up. I went to my computer. I opened the draft Elena and I had written. To Mr. Vance, Counsel for the Estate. From Elena Rosales, Counsel for Claire Butler. Subject, Settlement Offer. Regarding the $20,000 instrument, Dear Mr. Vance, my client, Ms. Butler, is distraught over the conflict this misunderstanding has caused the family. In the interest of peace and to alleviate the stress on her mother, Ms. Butler is willing to return the full sum of $20,000 to the estate trust account immediately. I typed the next paragraph carefully. This was the trigger. However, as a condition of this return, and to ensure the integrity of the estate for all beneficiaries, Ms. Butler requires the following standard documents to be provided prior to the transfer. 1. Full unredacted bank statements for all estate accounts for the 24 months prior to death. 2. A sworn affidavit from the executor regarding the handling of the decedent's mail during the final year. 3. Itemized receipts for all caregiving reimbursements listed in the initial accounting. 4. A full ledger of payments made to third-party vendors, specifically including Horizon Restoration LLC. Once these routine documents are provided and verified, Ms. Butler will wire the funds within 1 hour. It was a beautiful trap. If they were innocent, they would say, sure, Here are the receipts. Give us the money. But they weren't innocent. They couldn't provide receipts for Horizon restoration because no restoration happened. They couldn't provide the bank statements because it would show the flow of money to David's shell company. They couldn't accept the offer, but by refusing it, they admitted that hiding the documents was more important than getting the $20,000 back. I hit send. The response took 4 hours. It didn't come from Vance. It came from Mom. She must have seen the email on Vance's chain and hit reply all in a rage. From Linda Butler. To Elena Rosales. Mr. Vance. David Butler. Subject. Settlement. Offer. This is blackmail. She knows we can't produce receipts for every single sandwich. She is just trying to humiliate me. We do not negotiate with her. That check was the trigger for all of this scrutiny, and she knows it. If she really loved her grandfather, she would stop digging and just do what she is told. David, tell Vance to file the motion to dismiss her claim. I stared at the screen. That check was the trigger. She admitted it. She admitted that the check wasn't the problem. The scrutiny was the problem. She admitted that my deposit was the catalyst that threatened to expose everything else. Elena called me 5 minutes later. Did you see it? She asked. I saw it. I said, the trigger, Elena said. She just handed us a motive. She isn't fighting for the assets. She is fighting to suppress the audit. What do? We wait, Elena said. The credit union is faster than we are. She was right. The machinery Grandpa had set in motion was grinding forward on its own gears now. 2 days later, the escalation arrived. I received a copy of a letter sent to the estate. Because I was a named beneficiary and currently in litigation with the estate, the bank was required to copy me on notices regarding the freezing of assets. First denial. Credit Union Department of Risk Management. To the executor of the estate of Arthur Butler. Notice of account freeze and referral. Dear Ms. Butler, following an internal review triggered by recent activity, including the clearing of Check 492 and subsequent discovery of irregular transfers to Horizon Restoration LLC, First Denial Credit Union has placed a temporary freeze on all accounts associated with the decedent. Our investigation has identified potential violations of our Know Your Customer, KYC, and Elder Financial Protection policies. Please be advised that we are required by law to file a Suspicious Activity Report, SAR, with the relevant federal authorities. We have also flagged these transactions for review by the state probate court. Access to funds will remain restricted until a full forensic audit is completed. It was done. The bank had dropped the hammer. They didn't just freeze the money. They filed a SAR. That meant federal involvement. That meant the IRS. That meant the FBI if the amounts were high enough. David's shell company was about to be dissected by people with badges. The silence from the family was immediate and terrifying. The group chat died. Aunt Sarah stopped posting on Facebook. Then, the phone calls started. Not the angry ones, the nervous ones. My cousin Emily called me. Claire. She whispered, David is freaking out. He came over to Mom's house last night and he looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He was yelling at Aunt Linda about paper trails and signatures. What is going on? The truth is going on. I said, is Aunt Linda going to go to jail? I don't know. I said, and I honestly didn't. Then the mediator called. It wasn't Vance. Vance had apparently recused himself. Rats jumping from a sinking ship. It was a new attorney. A court-appointed mediator named Mrs. Howell, Miss Butler. She said, I have been in contact with your mother's new representation. Given the developments with the credit union, all parties have agreed that a formal mediation is necessary to resolve the estate issues before the court intervenes further. We have scheduled a meeting for Thursday at 10 o'clock. I will be there. I said, I spent Wednesday night preparing the binder. Elena told me to keep it simple. Don't overwhelm them, she said. Just show them the blade. I bought a black 1-inch binder. Tab 1. The check. A high-resolution copy of the front and back. Tab 2. The timeline. A simple graphic showing the date of the check, the date of the notary visit, and the date of mailing. Tab 3. The notary. The affidavit from Brian. The mobile notary, confirming he verified Grandpa's capacity on the 14th. Tab 4. The pattern, the spreadsheet Elena made, showing the doctor days and the cash withdrawals. Tab 5. The shell, the articles of incorporation for Horizon Restoration LLC, with David's loop-de-loop signature highlighted in yellow. Tab 6. The note, a copy of the handwritten note. Don't let them rewrite me. It was thin, it was light, but it was heavy enough to crush them. I was putting the final label on the spine when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. A landline. Hello? Is this Claire? A man's voice asked. It sounded ancient, like dry leaves rustling. Yes, I said. This is Robert Ames, the voice said. I was a friend of your grandfather's. We played chess on Thursdays. I remembered the name. Grandpa spoke of Robert. He was the one person Grandpa respected because Robert could beat him. Mr. Ames, I said, it is good to hear from you. I heard about the trouble. He said, the grapevine at the senior center is faster than the internet. You know, Mrs. Gable told me your mother is trying to say Arthur was dotty. She is. I said. Robert let out a dry chuckle. Arthur was the least dotty man I ever met. He beat me in 4 moves the week before he died. I smiled, tears pricking my eyes. Claire, Robert said, his voice turning serious. Arthur gave me something for you. He told me to hold it until the fireworks started. He said I would know when that was. What is it? I asked. He came by my house that last week. He had a little digital recorder. He said he couldn't put it in the will because Linda would burn it. He couldn't mail it because Linda stole his mail. So he recorded it and gave it to me. Can I hear it? I asked. I can play it for you now, Robert said. Hold on. I heard the fumbling of plastic, the click of a button. Then, through the static of the phone line, I heard him. It was Grandpa's voice. Not the weak, raspy voice from the hospital. The strong, clear baritone I remembered from my childhood. Claire Bear, he said. I squeezed my eyes shut. If you are hearing this, it means you deposited the check. Good girl. I knew you would. You were always the brave one. Even if you didn't think so. He paused. I heard him take a breath. I know what they are going to say. They are going to say I was confused. They are going to say I didn't know about the money Linda was taking. But I knew. I knew about the cash. I knew about David's fake company. I saw the papers on the table one day when he thought I was asleep. The anger in his voice was sharp and clear. I could have stopped them, I suppose. I could have called the police. But Linda, she is my daughter, and I was too tired to fight a war in my own living room. I just wanted peace at the end. But I couldn't let them leave you with nothing. And I couldn't let them lie about who I was. So I wrote the check. It is a breadcrumb. Claire, it is the only way they will have to explain. They can't explain the check without explaining the account. And they can't explain the account without exposing themselves. I am sorry I have to use you as the hammer. But you are the only one strong enough to swing it. Don't let them bully you. Don't let them take it back. And for God's sake, don't let them tell you I didn't love you. Checkmate, kiddo. The recording clicked off. I sat there. The phone pressed to my ear. Tears streaming down my face. He knew. He knew everything. He saw David stealing. He saw Mom lying. And he made a choice. He chose me. He didn't just leave me money. He left me a mission. You are the only one strong enough to swing it. Claire? Robert asked gently. I am here, I said, wiping my face. Do you want me to bring this to the meeting? He asked. Yes. Mr. Ames, I said. Please. I hung up. I looked at the binder on my table. The truth. I wasn't afraid of the meeting anymore. I wasn't afraid of Mom. I wasn't afraid of David. I had the binder. I had the facts. And I had Grandpa in my corner. I turned off the light. Tomorrow, we would finish the game. The conference room at the mediation center was designed to be soothing. The walls were a soft, non-committal beige. The chairs were upholstered in a calming blue. And a small fountain in the corner burbled with aggressive tranquility. It was a room built to neutralize anger, But as I walked in, I knew that no amount of feng shui could absorb the hatred radiating from the other side of the table. I arrived exactly at 10 o'clock. Elena was with me, carrying her briefcase. I carried nothing but my black 1-inch binder. The truth. My mother and David were already seated. They had a new lawyer with them, a woman named Ms. Albright, who looked sharp, tired, and expensive. Mom was wearing black, as if she were still in deep mourning, though I noticed her lipstick was applied with surgical precision. David looked terrible. His skin was pasty, his eyes rimmed with red, and he was tapping his foot against the table leg in a frantic, staccato rhythm. They didn't look at me. They looked at the empty chairs opposite them as if hoping they would remain empty. Mrs. Howell, the mediator, sat at the head of the table. She was a woman of indeterminate age with a kind face and eyes that had seen every variation of human greed imaginable. "Good morning," Mrs. Howell said. Her voice was low and measured. "Thank you all for coming. The goal of today is to establish a path forward for the administration of the Arthur Butler estate and to address the pending petition regarding the freezing of assets." She looked at Mom. "Mrs. Butler, would you like to begin?" Mom took a deep breath. She placed her hands on the table, palms down. She looked at me then, her eyes swimming with a mixture of sorrow and disappointment that I knew she had practiced in the mirror. "I just want to say," Mom began, her voice trembling just enough to be affecting, "that this is a tragedy. We are a family. We should be grieving my father, not sitting in a room with lawyers. I have tried to protect this family. I have tried to protect my father's legacy. And it breaks my heart that my own daughter has chosen to turn a moment of confusion into a legal battle. Claire has a history of overreacting. She has a history of taking small things and making them dramatic because she feels unseen." I felt the familiar prickle of shame, the old button she always pressed. "You are dramatic. You are the problem." But then I felt the weight of the binder under my hand. I wasn't that Claire anymore. "I am not asking for drama," Mom continued, wiping a single tear from her cheek. "I am asking for loyalty. I am asking for the return of the $20,000 that was taken from a vulnerable man, so we can close this ugly chapter and move on." She finished and looked at the mediator, expecting sympathy. Mrs. Howell nodded politely. "Thank you, Mrs. Butler." "Claire?" I didn't give a speech. I didn't talk about my feelings. I didn't defend my mental health. I opened the binder. "I am here to discuss the facts regarding the validity of the check and the financial history of the estate." I said. My voice was steady. It sounded like a stranger's voice. I turned to tab 1. "This is the check," I said, dated October 14th. "This is the affidavit from Brian Miller, a licensed mobile notary, who visited Grandpa at 2:30 in the afternoon on October 14th. I slid the paper across the table. Ms. Albright picked it up. Mom stared at it, her jaw tightening. "Mr. Miller's sworn statement confirms that he performed a capacity check." I said. "He verified that Arthur Butler knew the date, the president, and the nature of the document he was notarizing. He was not confused. He was not coerced. He was lucid. That is just one person's opinion." Mom snapped. "He saw him for 10 minutes. I lived with him. I saw the nights where he didn't know who I was." I turned to tab 2, the timeline. The check was mailed via a tracked envelope from the UPS store on 4th Street at 2:15 in the afternoon. I said, "Grandpa didn't drive. He arranged for transportation. Or he walked. That requires planning. That requires executive function." David stopped tapping his foot. He was staring at the timeline. He was confused. Mom insisted, her voice rising. She slammed her hand on the table. "You don't get it, Claire." He would have moments of clarity, yes, but underneath it all, he was terrified. He thought people were stealing from him. He was paranoid. He wrote that check because he was hallucinating that he needed to save you from some imaginary threat. He was confused. There it was, the line. I looked at Mrs. Howell. "May I play a piece of audio evidence?" I asked. "Miss Albright frowned. What audio? A voicemail. I said, recorded by the decedent shortly before his death. Mom went still. Her face drained of color. She didn't know about the voicemail. She thought she had intercepted everything. Mrs. Howell nodded. Proceed. I took out my phone. I connected it to the small Bluetooth speaker I had brought. I placed it in the center of the table. I looked at Mom. You say he was confused. I said softly, let us ask him. I pressed play. The room was silent, save for the hum of the fountain. Then, Grandpa's voice filled the air, clear, strong, undeniable, Claire Bear. Mom flinched as if she had been slapped. If you are hearing this, it means you deposited the check. Good girl. I watched David. He had closed his eyes. He looked like he was praying for the floor to open up and swallow him. I know what they are going to say. Grandpa's voice continued. They are going to say, I was confused. They are going to say I didn't know about the money Linda was taking, but I knew. Mom let out a strangled sound, a gasp that got stuck in her throat. I knew about the cash. I knew about David's fake company. I saw the papers on the table one day when he thought I was asleep. The air in the room seemed to vanish. Ms. Albright looked at David. She looked at Mom. She moved her chair slightly away from them. I am sorry I have to use you as the hammer, Grandpa said, but you are the only one strong enough to swing it. Checkmate, kiddo. The recording ended. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating, and absolute. Mom was shaking. Her hands were trembling so violently that her bracelets rattled against the table. That is fake, she whispered. Her voice was thin, reedy. You used AI. You made that up, Ms. Albright leaned forward. Mrs. Butler, please be quiet. No, Mom cried. She was looking at me with wild eyes. He never said that. He loved me. He wouldn't say that about me. I turned to tab 4. The pattern. Elena took over. Her voice was cool, professional. The voice of the law dissecting a disaster. We have cross-referenced the withdrawals from the estate account with the dates of Arthur Butler's medical appointments. Elena said, there is a distinct pattern of cash withdrawals ranging from $2,000 to $4,000 occurring within 24 hours of documented medical distress. She slid the spreadsheet across the table. Ms. Albright looked at it. She didn't look happy. Furthermore, Elena continued, the $20,000 check to Claire triggered a compliance audit at the credit union. That audit flagged a series of transfers to an external entity known as Horizon Restoration, LLC. David opened his eyes. He looked at me. There was no anger in his face anymore, just fear. We have the articles of incorporation for Horizon Restoration, I said, turning to tab 5. It was formed 6 months ago. The registered agent address matches a private mailbox center. The banking resolution signature matches David's handwriting. I looked at my brother. David, I said, did Grandpa ever have any restoration work done on the house? David opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked at his lawyer. Ms. Albright held up a hand. Do not answer that. He didn't need to answer. The silence answered for him. Ms. Butler. Mrs. Howell said, turning to Mom, the allegation is that estate funds were diverted to a shell company controlled by a family member, and that you facilitated this while acting as your father's primary caregiver. This is a very serious matter. Mom looked cornered. She looked from David to me to the mediator. She needed a way out. She needed to be the victim again. I didn't know it was a shell company. She cried. David told me it was a contractor. He told me he was handling the repairs. I just signed the checks he put in front of me. David's head snapped up. Excuse me? I trusted my son. Mom sobbed, burying her face in her hands. I just wanted the house fixed. I didn't know. You are lying, David said. His voice was quiet, stunned. David, Ms. Albright warned. She was in the room, David said, his voice rising. She drove me to the bank. She told me how to structure the LLC so it wouldn't look like income. I stared at them. They were eating each other. The united front had crumbled the moment the pressure got real. Mrs. Howell cleared her throat. Let us address the mail. Claire alleges that she has not received estate correspondence and that her grandfather's mail was intercepted. I didn't steal his mail, Mom said, looking up, her mascara smeared. I sorted it. He was overwhelmed. He would get these letters from the bank about suspicious activity or fraud alerts, and he would get upset. I was keeping him calm. I was protecting him from the stress. So you admit you withheld bank notices regarding the accounts? Elena asked. I handled them, Mom screamed. I am the executor. It was my job to handle them. The door to the conference room opened. We all turned. It was Uncle Ted. He looked terrified. He was wearing his Sunday suit, which was 2 sizes too big for him. He was clutching a plastic bag. I'm sorry to interrupt, Ted said. Mrs. Howell frowned. Who are you? I am Ted, he said. Linda's brother. Claire asked me to come. I nodded. It is okay. Mrs. Howell, he has evidence. Ted walked to the table. He didn't look at Mom. He looked at the table. I went to the post office, Ted said softly. After Claire told me about the check Grandpa tried to send me, the one that never arrived, he reached into the bag and pulled out a crumpled, yellowed envelope. They had this in the dead letter bin. Ted said, it was returned as undeliverable. It is addressed to me. From Dad. He placed it on the table. I looked at the address. Theodore Butler, 12 Maple Lane. The address was correct, but someone had taken a black marker and drawn a thick line through the address. And someone had written, in block letters, moved. No forwarding address. The handwriting wasn't Grandpa's, and it wasn't a postal worker's. It was Mom's. I looked at the envelope, then I looked at Mom. You marked it undeliverable. I said, you didn't just sort the mail. You actively stopped him from communicating with his own son. Mom stared at the envelope. She looked like she was seeing a ghost. He was sending money away, she whispered. He was bleeding the accounts dry. I had to stop him. We needed that money for the house, for the future, for you. I said, for the family, she yelled. It is the same thing. Ms. Albright stood up. She began packing her briefcase. What are you doing? Mom asked, panic rising in her voice. Ms. Albright looked at Mom with cold, professional detachment. Mrs. Butler, I can no longer represent you or the estate in this matter. A conflict of interest has arisen, and disclosures have been made that require me to withdraw. You need criminal defense counsel. She looked at David. You too. Ms. Albright walked out. The room was silent again, but it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the silence of a structure collapsing. Mrs. Howell took off her glasses. She looked tired. This mediation is concluded, she said. I am referring this matter to the probate judge with a recommendation for the immediate removal of Linda Butler as executor. I am also submitting a report to the district attorney's office regarding the admissions made here today. She looked at Elena. I assume you will be filing for a forensic accounting? We already have, Elena said. Mrs. Howell nodded. Good. The accounts are frozen effective immediately. No distributions, no withdrawals. Mom sat there, alone at her side of the table. David had put his head in his hands. I stood up. I picked up my binder. Claire, Mom whispered. I stopped. I didn't turn around. Please, she said. Her voice was small, broken. I am your mother. I turned then. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had called me unstable, who had called me a thief, who had tried to erase my grandfather's mind to cover her own greed. I know, I said, and that is the only reason I'm not pressing charges myself. But I can't stop the bank, and I can't stop the truth. I walked out. The hallway was bright. The air conditioning was cold. I walked out of the building and into the parking lot. The sun was shining, which felt wrong. It should have been raining. It should have been storming. Uncle Ted followed me out. He stood next to me by my car. You did good. Claire, he said. He handed me the envelope Grandpa had tried to send him. Dad would have been proud. I took the envelope. Inside, I could feel the stiff paper of a check. $500. He lost his family too. You know, Ted said. Looking at the building, when he realized what they were doing, he was lonely in that house, He wasn't entirely alone. I said, he had the notary. He had Mrs. Gable. He had Robert. He had you. Ted said, even if you weren't there, he was betting on you. I nodded. I felt a lump in my throat. Hard and painful. I got into my car. I sat there for a long time. I had won. The money was safe. The estate would be recovered. Mom and David would face consequences, maybe jail, maybe bankruptcy, certainly shame. But I had lost them. I would never have a Christmas dinner with them again. I would never call Mom for advice. I would never joke with David about bad movies. The price of the truth was the illusion of the family. I looked at the passenger seat. The binder sat there. The truth. I remembered Grandpa's note. Don't let them rewrite me. They had tried to write him as a confused, senile old man. They had tried to write me as a hysterical, greedy failure. But we had written our own ending. I started the car. I didn't know where I was going next. I didn't know what I would do with the money when it finally released. Maybe I would fix my credit. Maybe I would go back to school. Or maybe I would just drive. I pulled out of the lot, leaving the mediation center behind. I merged onto the highway, heading west, toward the sun. For the first time in my life, the story was mine. Thank you so much for listening to Don't Embarrass Yourself with That Prop. Mom said Grandpa's $20,000 check was fake, so I deposited it. This was a journey about truth, gaslighting, and the incredible power of keeping your receipts. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Please drop your city or country in the comments below. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed Claire's battle for justice, please make sure to subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel so you never miss an episode. And I want to hear from you. Do you think Claire made the right choice in the end? Was losing her family worth exposing the truth? Share your thoughts in English in the comments. I read every single one. Until next time, keep your eyes open and trust your gut.